Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Muhammad and today we're going to be basically creating a full end-to-end Blazor application in order for it to communicate with our web API in .NET 8. We're going to be creating everything that we need for our CRUD operation in order for us to do create, update, delete and read all of the information that we need through our Blazor application from our web API. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. As well, if you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. With that said, grab your cup of coffee and let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating our new Blazor application. We're going to add it to our solution, add a couple of references, and then we're going to be starting building our application. So let's see how we can do that. Inside my solution, I'm going to click add, new project, and I'm going to choose Blazor. Perfect. And I'm going to call this Formula 1 dot app, because basically this is going to be my interface for my application, and from the drop down here I'm going to be utilizing the standalone application. So I'm going to be utilizing the WASM. Other than that, I'm not going to be utilizing anything. I don't need authentication, I don't need any Docker support at the moment. I'm just going to leave it as is, and I'm going to click on create. Perfect. I'm going to add my files, and now as you can see here I have my Blazor application available for me so I can directly utilize it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add reference to my entities, because I'm going to be utilizing this class library inside my Formula 1 application. So in order for me to do that, I can do it directly through the terminal, and we can do .NET add Formula 1. Actually, let's check where we are. Plus, yeah, .NET add Formula 1 app reference to Formula 1 entities. Perfect. And now I have added the reference. So if I click here, right click and edit CSproj, we'll be able to see that it has a reference to my entities. Perfect. So once we have done that, the next step for us is I'm going to be starting creating a page where I can see all of my drivers. So inside pages, so before we get started into all of this, let us just understand the main structure of our Blazor application. So as we can see here, we have normal dependencies that we currently see within any normal .NET application. Properties, where actually all of the launch configuration are there. www root, where we can actually store all of our CSS images, anything that we might need, it's going to go into the www root. Layout, it's going to be where all of the main structure of our page, where it's going to be, so the header, the footer, anything around those lines, the menus, is going to be inside our layout. And then we have our pages, and inside our pages we're going to have the different sections that we currently have. So before we actually start adding stuff, let us just make it run, and we can see what's available inside. As well, we can see here that we have a program.cs, and this is the exact program.cs framework that we currently see within any .NET application, a recent .NET application. We're going to be having a app.razor, and basically this is going to be the entry point for our application, and then from there it's going to be directed to the normal pages, because basically a Blazor application is like a single page application spa, similar to all of the JavaScript framework like Angular, React, etc., where we're going to have a main page and all of the components will basically be loaded into that. So let us run this. I'm just going to click here and I'm going to make it run. Perfect. Now you can see that my application is running, and you can see I have my 3 different pages. So if we take a look here inside pages, you can see I have counter, home, weather, and here we can see we have home, counter, weather, which is exactly what I need. Perfect. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to tidy this up. I'm going to remove the counter and the weather. I'm going to keep home for this moment, and I want to add a driver section. So let's see how we can do that. So let's stop this. And in order for me to clean this up, first of all, I'm going to add the driver page that I want. So I'm going to come here, add Blazor component, and I'm going to click on page. I'm going to call this drivers. And this is going to be drivers. This is going to be the landing page where all of my drivers are going to be, and I'm going to see all of my available drivers here. So I'm going to leave this like this for now. I'm not going to change anything here. I'm going to be doing a lot of changes later, but for now I'm just going to keep it as is. Then I'm going to basically delete the weather because I don't really need it. So I'm going to come here edit and delete. And then under counter as well, we don't really need it, so edit and delete. Perfect. So now I'm gonna go to my nav menu, and inside my nav menu here you can see I have my navigation menu for all of my pages. So I have already removed weather, so we can delete this, and I will update the counter to actually reflect the drivers. So first of all, I'm going to change it here from the counter to drivers. And as you can see here, I have href, and inside this href I need to specify exactly to which page it needs to go, and this one needs to match the name of my pages that I have. And basically here we can see inside pages called drivers, so that's exactly what it needs to be, so I'm going to put drivers. And other than that, if we run it right now, we should be able to see my new structure. So again, let's run this. And as you can see here, I have my home, I have my drivers, and I have everything available for me, and I have my new updated structure. So that's going to be the first step. And as you can see here, that within this first step, I was able to restructure a bit my application to actually fit with whatever I need in order for it to work. So now what I need to do is I want to create my CRUD operation for my Blazor application directly through here. So I want to create a list of all of my drivers. I want to have the ability to edit and delete, as well to add the new drivers directly from here. And we're going to be basically binding all of this together to my API. So basically I will be able to do any calls that I want to my web API and get back the response directly through that. So let's see how we can do this. So first of all, I'm going to stop this one. Before we move any further, I wanted to basically run my web API right now. So now that I have ran my API, let's see what do I get from my get endpoint. So if I click on this, click on try it out, execute, we can see here that I get the driver ID, full name, driver number, and date of birth. Perfect. I might need to add a couple of more information, but let us see what happens when I click on get driver by ID. And as I click on execute, we can see we also get the full name, driver name, and the date of birth. The thing that I want to add it to here is I want to get the first name and last name separately rather than having them both together. And once I do that, I can start working actually on my Blazor application. So let's update this. So I'm going to stop my application, and I'm going to go here into my controllers and drivers. So first of all, I'm going to go where I have my get driver, and I can see I have my get driver response. Let me go to this, and basically here what I want to do is I want to add my first name and last name. So here I'm going to put first name and my last name. Perfect. And once I have done that, let me go check this one here. I need to check my mappings to see if actually it's gonna map it correctly. So I'm gonna put domain to response, and I think that should be fine. So let us try this right now. I'm gonna run it again, and let's go back to my web browser, and I'm gonna click here on execute. And as you can see now, I get my first name and last name. Perfect. This is exactly what I want. And if I click here on get all drivers, I'm getting my first name and last name separately. Okay, great. So now that my API is up and ready and it's actually running as it should, what I want to do right now is I want to start building my services inside my Formula One app, which is actually going to consume this API endpoint. So I'm going to right click here, add new directory, and I'm going to call this services. And inside the services, I'm going to be creating another directory. I'm going to call this interfaces, where I'm going to add my interface. So the first interface that I want to add is my called driver service, and this is going to be an interface. And here I'm going to define my interface for my driver service. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to put task list get driver response. I think that was called get driver response, and here is going to be, make sure maybe it's nullable, and we're going to make it get drivers. Perfect. Then the other one's going to be task get driver response and get driver by ID, and here we're going to pass the GUID as an ID, and I'm gonna make this also nullable because we might not get a response. Then we're gonna put task get driver response, and this is when we do an add driver, and here we're gonna add the driver. And if you remember previously, I had a create driver request, and this is what we're gonna be sending to my API. So if we go here to the declaration, you can see here in order for me to create a driver, I have my first name, last name, driver number, and date of birth. And basically this will allow me to see to create a driver. So I have different DTOs. I have my create driver request, I have my updated driver request, which is going to be utilizing for update. So I already have those created, which is really good. So now let's go back to my service that I was creating here. And now we're going to have the other one, which is going to be task bool. It's going to be updated driver, and this is going to be the updated driver request. And lastly, need task, and here task again, bool, and this is going to be the last one, delete driver, and here all we're going to send is the driver ID. Perfect. So now that my interface is created and I can see my different CRUD operation that I have, the next step is I'm going to be creating or implementing this service. I'm going to create a class. I'm going to call it driver service. And inside this driver service, I'm going to be implementing this. So driver service, and it's complaining because we did not implement it. So let's implement them now. That's all of them. Okay, perfect. Now we can see that I have my 5 services here. So let's get started with implementing them. So first things first, here I need to declare a HTTP client, and this HTTP client is going to be mainly responsible for communicating between my Blazor application and my web API. So I'm going to be utilizing it here, but I'm going to be injecting it inside my program.cs as well automatically in order for it to actually knows how to communicate. The first thing that I need to do here is I need to actually inject my HTTP request inside my service in order for it to actually be able to communicate with my web API, and then I need to actually configure it inside my program.cs. So let's see how we can do that. So here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put private read only HTTP client, and then h_HTTP, and I'm just going to put a constructor, and I'm going to tell rider to initialize this inside my constructor. Perfect. And what I'm going to do here, just to facilitate this for me, I'm going to put private read only JSON serialization option, serializer option, and I'm going to put underscore JSON serializer option. Perfect. So with that, and let me declare this inside here, initialize it. And this one here, what I want to do is I want to specify a certain configuration that's going to be utilized across all of the different services. So perfect, and I don't really need this right now. Let me just copy this. I don't need this, and I can make this like this. Okay, perfect. So here all I'm going to do is property name property name insensitive, I'm going to be equal to true. So that way we don't really care about case sensitivity. Perfect. So now that I have this, the next step is I'm going to start building my services, and I'm going to start with my get drivers. First of all, I need to make this async, and I'm going to delete this. And just for error management, I'm going to put my try catch here, and then I'm going to build my service through that. So the first thing that I need to do here is I need to start actually by creating my API call. So through this, first of all, I'm going to put here API response equal await underscore HTTP dot get stream async, and here I'm going to specify the endpoint that I want to utilize, and this is going to be API / drivers. This is the endpoint that I'm going to be utilizing in order for me to get my drivers, and then I'm going to put var drivers equal await JSON serializer dot deserialize async, and then here I'm going to specify it's going to be a list of get driver response and we're gonna pass here the API response, and then all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna pass the drivers back. And one more thing, because we have already declared this here, which is gonna be my serialization option, so let me use it. So inside here, I'm just gonna pass my serialization option. So that way it will automatically have the name case insensitivity available. I'm gonna leave this as is for now. So now this is gonna be for my get driver. Now let's continue building the other services. So the next one we're gonna be doing is gonna be our get driver by ID, and this is gonna be a bit straightforward to do. So first of all, make this async, and then let's remove this. And from here, we're gonna add the following. We're gonna put var driver equal await underscore http dot get from JSON async. And then here, all we need to do is just pass what type of response we're expecting, which is gonna be the get driver response. And here we're gonna basically pass our endpoint. So we're gonna put /API /drivers. And / the ID. Perfect. And all we're going to be doing here is return driver. Let's make this inside try catch. Perfect. Now let's put this here. So now that we have done 2 out of the 5, let's continue and let's add the add driver. So let's remove this. Let's make this async. And here let's add the try catch. And first of all, what I need to do is I need to confirm the body that I have here, the object, into JSON. So that's going to be the first thing. So I'm going to put var driver JSON equal new string content. And from here I can put the JSON serializer dot serialize, and I can pass the driver. And then I can put the encoding, which is going to be UTF-8. And then all I need to do at the end is I'm going to put it's going to be of type application /JSON. As simple as that. So basically here what I'm doing is I'm just converting my object into JSON, and I'm giving it the UTF-8 encoding, and I'm telling it that's going to be a JSON type. Then I'm going to basically do var response equal await underscore http dot post async, and here I'm gonna put API /drivers, and that should be it. And then I need to pass the driver JSON that I have, and that basically will allow me to actually attach my my body of the request to my request here. And as you can see, it's a post. And then all I'm gonna do here is say if underscore. Then all I'm gonna do here is if not response dot is successful, return null. Else what I'm gonna do is var response body equal await response dot content dot read as stream async. And then I'm gonna put here var new driver equal await JSON serializer dot deserialize driver async, deserialize async. Here it's gonna be of type get driver response, and we're gonna have to pass the response body. And I'm gonna pass also the configuration that I added, which is gonna be the serialization option. So let me add this here. Perfect. And lastly, I'm just gonna return the new driver. So return. Perfect. So I'm ended up with my last two that I need to implement, which is gonna be also straightforward to do. I'm gonna put async here. Let me remove this. And here it's gonna be var. I'm gonna convert this also to a JSON. So what I can do is simply just copy this rather than trying to do all of this again, and then I can update it. So copy. Let's put try catch. And then I'll add this here. So first of all, this is not gonna be a post, this is gonna be a put. So it's gonna be put async. And then once this is done, this is going to be the same. Here what I need to do is I need to attach the driver ID. So I'm going to put $/ driver ID. Actually, do I need it? Let's check the API. So it's going to be driver.id. But let me check the API. So let me go back to my web browser. And if we take a look at the put, it's not expecting it. Okay, perfect. So I don't really need this here. Let me remove this. Okay, great. And then basically, if it's not successful, I'm going to return false. Else I'm going to return. Actually, let's just make it return response dot successful status code. As simple as that. So here we can see it's pretty straightforward. All we're doing is we're just making a put, adjusting the body, and then sending it. And basically the driver here is going to be the update, which is exactly what we want. And the last one that we need, it's going to be the delete. It's going to be also pretty straightforward. I'm going to put async. Let's remove this. Try. And it's going to be var response equal await underscore http dot delete async, and we're gonna put /API dot / drivers API here. Sorry, here we're gonna put the ID, and let me add the $sign here. Okay, perfect. And then lastly, response. All we're going to be doing here is put return response dot successful status code. Perfect. So now that we have all of this ready, now let us actually inject this service inside my program.cs. So I'm going to go to my program.cs, and after I do this, I'm going to attach it here. So I'm going to put builder.services.add scoped, and here all I'm going to do is just it's going to be the driver service with the driver service, and that's it. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm actually attaching my service that I just created into my DI container. So similar to what we have normally within any ASP.NET Core, what we're doing is we're attaching our service into our DI inside our program.cs. So whenever an application is starting, it will be able to identify. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be attaching this service into our page, so it's going to be injected there through our DI container. So it's really important to add this. So the next step now is we need to identify inside our Blazor application is where does the endpoint for our API is. So inside our program.cs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to configure it right now to specify or to point my application to the API, so it will automatically detect that it needs to communicate to that API. So let's see how we can do that. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put builder.services.add scoped, and within this, we're going to basically configure our HTTP client. So I'm just going to put H client for HTTP client, and it's going to be new HTTP client. And then from here, all I'm going to be doing is just adding the configuration that I need for it. And it's going to be pretty straightforward. All I'm going to do is just going to configure the base address, and the base address is going to be new URI, and this is going to be the exact endpoint that we're going to be utilizing for our application. And we can see here that the endpoint starts with localhost 5000. So this is what I'm going to be using. So here I'm going to put, it's going to be HTTP localhost 5000. I'm going to put the / here, so I don't have to do it inside my services. But in essence, once I have this here, it allows me to actually define what is my endpoint that I want to connect to for my API, so my application will run. And the reason I did it this way, in order for me to actually make this configurable, is through my app settings. So in a real world scenario, what I will do is I'll add a configuration section inside my app settings for the API endpoint. So whenever the application is booting, it will go up to this API endpoint and it will be able to communicate. This will allow me to facilitate testing if my API is to be updated, etc., etc. I don't have to redeploy my application. All I have to do is just specify this configuration inside app settings. But for now, to make it simple, I just left it as it is inside my app settings. Inside my program.cs. So now that we have done that, the next step is I'm just going to add some configuration inside my import.razor. So I don't have to actually add a lot of the configuration there. All I need to do is just add one which is going to be at using formula1.app.services.interfaces. So that basically will allow me to inject my services without actually having to add the using. It will be globally available. It's not really necessary to do, but I just like to do it from here. And the next step now, I want to actually start building my component. So I want to actually start building this. So in order for us to build this, as you can see here, I have the add code, which is basically usually where my C# code goes in. So I have two options. What I can do is I can add my C# code directly within my same Blazor page, or I can have a different class outside my Blazor page where it's actually going to be responsible for handling all of the C# code. It's up to you to basically choose whatever one you see fit. I like to have completely separate, so I would like to have my UI on one side and my C# code on one side, rather than have one big document containing all of the logic together. But again, it does not really matter. It is up for you to decide however you want it to do. But for this example, what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be creating another class with the same name, so it will handle all of the logic of my Blazor UI. So let's see how we can do that. So here, instead of actually having my add code here, I'm just going to delete this. And inside my pages, I'm just going to add a new class, and I'm going to call this the same name as my Blazor page. So it's going to be drivers.cs. And now the main thing that I need to do is, instead of having it as a class, I need to make it as a partial, because what Blazor is going to be doing is whenever it's going to see that I have a driver.Blazor page, it's going to automatically assume that there's going to be an embed class called driver. So when I make it as partial, it will basically think that this class is directly belongs to this, and it will automatically inherit all of the different functionality that it needs. So that way, I don't really have to do a lot of work here. So that way, Blazor will automatically detect that this belongs to the driver Blazor page, and it will automatically execute everything that exists inside. So, and this way I have a full separation of concerns between my UI and my C# code. So now what I want to do is first I want to inject the service that I have, which is going to be private driver service, and we're going to put get set. And the reason here I have inject, because this is a partial class, I cannot really do the initialization through the constructor, because all of the initialization is happening through Blazor. But when I add this attribute inject, Blazor will know that this is going to be coming through the DI container, and because I automatically configured it inside my program.cs, it will be automatically initialized. So that's a really cool thing that I have here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to define, so I'm going to put public enumerable driver, and I'm going to put drivers get and set, and I'm going to be equal to new list of drivers. Okay, so let's fix this. I think this should be the get driver async. Let's see get driver response. Let's see whatever the get gets us. So here the get, yeah, let's keep that as this. Perfect. So now that I have this, well, basically what I'm doing here is I'm declaring a variable which is going to allow me to inject stuff inside my Blazor. And this is here where I'm going to be creating a table, and inside this table I'm going to be loading these drivers, but for now it's going to be empty. So if there's no information, it's going to be loaded as empty. And now what I want to do is I want to do this, and we're going to explain what is this. So protected async override task on initialize async. So this one on initialized async is basically a method inside the lifecycle of the page. So basically what's happening here is, because we cannot access the constructor in order for us to add whenever we need to do on page initialization, Blazor have different methods embedded into it which allows us to tap into the loading component of the Blazor component in order for us to add actions whatever we need there. And the action that we want to add there is whenever the component is ready to be initialized, we want to actually call our service in order for us to get the information. And this is where the onInitialized async comes into place. So that means that the Blazor component has been fully initialized from the HTML point of view. And then we're basically calling the API, get the information, and then we're going to be loading it into the view. So let's see how we can do this. So here, as soon as I define this, and as we can see, this is a built-in method. I'm overriding it right now through my driver partial class. So here, basically, I'm gonna put var drivers. I'm gonna call the service, which is gonna be equal await underscore driver service dot get drivers. And then all I'm gonna be doing, very simple, I'm gonna say if drivers dot count is not equal to 0, all I'm gonna be doing here is just gonna say drivers equal drivers. So I'm taking whatever information that's coming back from the service here, and I'm actually assigning it here. As simple as that. So whatever information I'm getting from the service, I'm assigning it to this list that I have here. And that should be it. So now let's run this. First of all, I need to make sure that my application is running. Let's see why, oh, that's fine. Let's run our API. So I'm gonna run this in debug mode. Perfect, now my API is running. Now let's run this. This will not work, FYI. It's gonna create a problem, but we'll figure it out together. And now if I go to drivers, as you can see, nothing has happened. And if I click on inspect console, we can see that I have a lot of problems here and it's not working. So I have the main problem, which is gonna be my CORS issues. Because basically with CORS, I have two different services. I have my API and have my Blazor application, completely running separately. And the API usually will not allow anyone to directly connect to it unless that endpoint is automatically authorized. And this is where CORS into place. In order for me to allow the application to communicate, so the Blazor application to communicate with my API, I need to enable CORS. So basically I need to tell my API that there's going to be some requests coming from a certain endpoint that you need to allow in order for it to work. And this is going to be the main case here. So I'm going to stop both of them and I'm going to go to my program.cs inside my API. So what I'm going to be doing here is builder.services.add CORS, and then I'll have my options, and let's configure it now. And then basically the first thing that I need to do is options.add policy, and this policy is going to be Blazor app for my Blazor application. So if I have different applications, I can create different policies. And then what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to put my builder and I'm going to specify the different actions that I want to do here. And this is going to be straightforward. So I'm going to put builder.with origin, and this is where I'm going to specify where my request is going to be coming in. And if we open up our endpoint, let's run our app again so we can see the exact endpoint. So now it's running. And we can see the endpoint that it should be sending the request is localhost 5272. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to add this here. Okay, perfect. And I need to remove the last forward slash. And then all I'm going to say here is I'm going to say allow any header. And then I'm going to say dot allow any method and dot allow any credentials. And this is just for simplicity's sake. There's a lot of stuff that I can add others, but I can configure it in way more deeply. But for the sake of this example, this should do. And now once that is done, the next step is once I have initialized this service inside my builder.services, what I need to do is I need to activate it. So I'm just going to add it here. I'm going to put app.use CORS, and I'm just telling the policy name that I want. So this policy name, it needs to match whatever policy that I have specified here in order for it to run. If I don't specify this, it will not actually work. So now let's run them both again. So I'm going to run my API. So it's going to run here. And now this is actually running. Let's run this. Okay, my application is running. And now if I click on drivers, I'm not going to still see anything. But if I come here, click on network, let's refresh. And if I click on network, we can see here that I called my drivers, and in the response, it's not that one, this drivers. We can see here that I got my information, which here you can see that I have Lewis's information available. Perfect. So that means that I'm able to connect now my application, my Blazor application to my API. So the next step is I'm going to build the UI for this. So I'm going to click on stop. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go to my driver.Blazor. And then here I'm going to put very simply table. I'm gonna give it class table, and then I'm gonna put a, and inside of this I'm gonna have a tr, and I'm gonna have a th, and inside this th I'm gonna have my id. Actually, let's just copy paste them, it's easier. I'm gonna have an id, first name, last name, and my number, and an empty th for the edit and delete button. So here I'm gonna have id, name, first name actually, last name, and driver. And then all I'm gonna be doing here is I'm gonna leave this empty. So this is my t-head. Now I'm gonna have my body, so t-body. And then inside my t-body, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a for each. And I'm gonna put for drivers, drivers, it's underscore drivers. So now this drivers that we see here is the exact drivers that I have initialized here. And because this is initialized here inside a partial class, it means that this is also accessible through my view. And the reason that I actually assigning whatever information coming back from the API to this, because basically this information is going to be required for me to access this information here. So it's really good to have this initialized and then assign whatever value we need into it. So once we have done that, I'm gonna come here and then I'm gonna start building this. So I'm just gonna take the same tr here and then just update it. I'm gonna put copy. Perfect. So here it's gonna be add driver.id, driver ID. Perfect. Then it's gonna be add driver.first name, add driver.last name, add driver.driver number, and the last one is going to be for edit and delete. We're going to build them later. So now that I have this, quite simple, let us run this again and see the information being populated. So let's run it in debug mode, and let's run this also in debug mode. And now if I come here, let's wait until it runs. Perfect. Let me refresh. And let's click on drivers. And we can see I got loads of information available for me. I have my ID, I have my first name, last name, and my driver number. Okay, great. So now what I want to do is I want to add a button for me to add a driver, and then I'm going to be adding the edit and delete directly from here. So let me stop both of them. Okay, great. Let me close this. And what I'm going to be doing here is before the table starts, I'm going to add a simple href. And this href is going to allow me to add the driver. I specify the class, btn-success. And I'm going to say this is called add driver. It's not going to do anything. I don't have any page called the driver yet. And this is what I'm going to be creating next. But let us see it in action. So now this is running, and as you can see now I have a big nice button that says add driver. Okay, now we want to build this. So let's stop these two and let's start building our driver pages. So inside my pages here, I'm going to add a new Blazor component. I'm going to make it a page. I'm going to call it driver. Perfect. I'm going to remove the code because I'm going to be implementing the same thing as I did before, different class. So here I'm going to put driver.cs, and I'm going to make this as a partial. And one thing also directly, I'm just going to inject my service here. So inject, and I'm going to put private and drive service underscore driver service get and set. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build my UI. So first of all, I want to take a look at this. And here we can say it says add page, and then I have /driver. So what this means that this page currently can only take the /driver without taking any query string. In order for me to allow this to take a query string, what I need to do is I need to tell the page that it needs to expect a query string. So how can I do that? To do this, I'm going to put add page. I'm going to put driver. Then I'm going to put /. I'm going to specify here that I'm going to require a driver ID. And that's it. So now this page will actually recognize that there's going to be someone going to be navigated to it without a driver ID, and there's going to be someone navigated to it with a driver ID. But this driver ID I have not defined yet. This is going to be coming later. I'm going to be defining it, but it's always good for me to have it from now here. So once I have done this, the next step is I need to actually specify that how this page will handle that driver ID. So let me define this now before we continue, so we directly have understanding how it works. So I'm going to go to driver, and here what I'm going to do is, before we do anything else, I'm just going to specify that I'm going to expecting a parameter, and I'm going to put public string driver ID. I'm going to make it get and set. I'm going to put, that's it. So basically what I'm doing here is I told my Razor component that it needs to expect a parameter called driver ID. And for this parameter, in order for it to work, what it needs to do is it needs to let it be injected. And this driver ID will match exactly what I have here. And basically this is how it's gonna know that's this is gonna be the query string, which is gonna be passed to it. So now that I have my driver ID in place, the next step is I need to make sure that this page is actually compliant. So it means that if someone someone navigated to this page without a navigation ID, it means that they're going to be creating a driver. If they have navigated with an ID, it means they're going to be updating. So I'm going to be adding this logic here in order for my UI to shift based on that. So let's see how we can do this. So first of all, I'm going to put if I'm gonna put driver ID. Actually, we can put string dot is empty or is not all empty for driver ID. This means that I'm gonna put this here. If it's empty, it means that I'm gonna be create driver, else it's gonna be update driver. Perfect. And also, why not put page title? I'll add to other pages. So page title is what I'm going to be able to see in the tab. So again, there's no harm of adding it, just nice additional information. So now that I have specified my header and my page title, let's see what we need to do next. So next I'm going to be creating my form. I'm going to put here div class row, and then here I'm going to put my edit form, and this edit form is a component which is directly built into Blazor. It's not something that I created or managed. It's something directly available out of the box from Blazor, and if I hover over it, we can see it comes from the ASP.NET component forms.edit forms. So it's built into the .NET framework. So the edit form, in order for it to work, it needs to require a model. I don't have a model yet, but I'm going to be creating it, and I'm going to say the model is going to be equal to add driver model. Let's just create this driver model right now. So I'm going to go back to my driver.cs, and inside my driver.cs, I'm going to inject here my model. So I'm going to put public get driver response. I'm going to call this driver model get set, and I'm going to make it equal to new get driver response in case it wasn't initialized. Actually, let's remove this and it will work. So now if I go back here, this is going to be my model, and what I need to specify here is on valid submit. What action do I need to do? And this is going to be at handle valid submit, and I'm going to add another one. They are not declared yet, but I'm going to be declare them on invalid submit. I'm going to say at handle invalid submit, and lastly I need to specify my form name, and I'm going to say sample form. You can call it whatever I want. So now that I have my initialization for my edit form is available, now I can actually work on the other items. So first of all, it's going to be my data annotation validator. I'm going to say that's going to be required, and then I'm going to specify here my validation summary. So in case there's something which is not working, it will be actually available here. And then I'm going to start building my form. So I'm going to be div class form dash group. I'm going to close this, and then here I'm going to specify my label. and I'm gonna make it call class call dash md dash 3, and this is gonna be for first name. And then here I'm gonna specify my input text, and this again built into Blazor. It's not something I created, and I'm gonna put class call dash md dash 8, and then I can make this form control, and here this is really important, and this is going to be a main item. I'm going to put bind dash value, and then here I'm going to say it's going to belong equal, yeah. And here it's very important. I'm going to switch to my driver model, and then I'm going to put my first name. And this bind value that I have is going to allow me to do two-way binding. So it means that whenever I'm getting information to be loaded, it's going to load it here, and whenever I want to submit information, it will take it from this. And this is what makes our input text to be able to be updating our model based on whenever I click submit. So it's really important to have this in place. So this is going to be for my first name. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to put it for my last name as well. So here is going to be last name, and here is going to be last name. Perfect. So now the other one's gonna be my driver number. So I'm gonna make it like this. And so here instead of text, I'm gonna put input number. Perfect. And here instead of first name, it's gonna be my driver number. Great. I'm gonna copy it again. And I'm gonna put it here. Let's fix this. Let's fix this name here. Again, it's going to be driver number, not first name. And here is going to be date of birth. Perfect. And here is going to be date of birth. Great. So now that I have all of this, let's change this into input date. Perfect. So now that I have all of this, I have my four main elements, which is going to be first name, last name, driver number, as well as date of birth. So now I have done this. Now I need to create my submit button. So I'm going to put button, type, submit, and it's going to have a class, btn dash warning, and I'm going to call this save driver. And this is going to be basically it. Another item that I would like to have, so this is going to be basically it for me to submit my form. It's not going to really have anything else to need to do. I need to basically now create the handle valid submit and handle invalid submit. But basically, in order for me to submit this form, that's all I need to do. The next step is I need to add my delete functionality. So I'm going to take the same logic that I have here. So based on that, if a string is not empty or null, I'm gonna basically create a button for delete. So this is gonna be here. So I'm gonna make it like this. So if my ID is not null or empty, I'm gonna add a button for deletion. It's gonna be add, click on click, and this is gonna be delete driver class. It's gonna be btn dash danger, because it's the delete, and I'm gonna say here delete driver. Perfect. And the last thing that I want to add is gonna be a message. So if there's anything going on wrong, the server is not responding, if there's any validation error, I'm gonna add an extra message here. So I'm gonna put div class form group. I'm just gonna have here a p and add message. I'm gonna create this object right now as well. So now that I have all of this, this is all I need to do basically in order for me to have my component running. So now let's update this. So I added already my driver service, and I added this. So let's add the message. So after this, I'm gonna put public string message get and set, and I'm gonna initialize it to equal string.empty. Okay, perfect. So now that I have this, now let us start building my service. So one thing that I would need here as well, in order for me to basically, once I create a driver to navigate back to the main page, or once I update a driver to navigate back to my main page, I need something called a navigation service. And this navigation service is automatically built into Blazor, and which allow me to navigate between pages through my C# code. So what I wanted to do here is I want to inject my driver service inside my driver.cs partial class. And once I inject this through my driver.cs partial class, I will be able to utilize it inside my code in order for me to navigate from one point to another. Pretty straightforward, very easy to implement. So inside here, directly after my inject my driver service, I'm just gonna put inject, and this time it's gonna be private navigation manager. I'm gonna call it underscore navigation manager get and a set, and that's it. So now that I have done this, all I'm gonna be doing right now is building on the same thing as we done before: protected, override, async, task, initialize async. As you can see, it automatically populated for me. And here I'm gonna build my logic in order for me to load a driver if the driver ID exists. So to do that, I'm gonna say if not string.empty or null, and I'm gonna put for my driver ID. If it's not, basically what I'm gonna do is I put var underscore driver ID equal new GUID driver ID, and then I'm gonna put var driver equal underscore, actually await underscore driver service dot get driver but ID, pass the driver ID. Let's make this as an async, protected override async. And now if that's going to be the case, I'm going to put if driver not equal to null. I'm going to put, what did I call it here? Driver model. So driver model is going to be equal to driver. Perfect. So that's going to be the first thing. And then I'm going to specify my two handles. So the first one, it was actually three. So I need to specify, first of all, let's do this handle invalid submit. So pretty straightforward. I'm going to put protected void handle invalid submit. All I'm going to do is I'm going to put message something went wrong. Let's fix this. Perfect. And now I'm going to handle the second one, which is going to be the handle valid submit. So let's do this. Protected async task handle submit. And here basically what we want to do is we want to take that form and submit it. So depending if it's gonna contain an ID or not, it's gonna be an add or an update. So we start with the same thing, if if string null or empty for driver ID. So if it is, it means we're gonna be doing an add. So here I'm just gonna say add driver, else we're going to be doing an update for the driver. Let's start with an add. And if we go back to my endpoint here, and if we take a look for posting a new driver, what do we need? We need the first name, last name, driver number, and date of birth, which is, it matched automatically with the, if we take a look here, create a new driver request. So that's what we need to be adhering to. So here what we need to do is we're going to put var new driver equal new create driver request, and here we're gonna put the driver number equal driver model dot driver number, first name equal driver model dot first name, date of birth driver model dot date of birth, and last name equal driver model dot class name. Okay, so what I did here is I did manual mapping between my driver model as well as the new driver. I can utilize here different libraries in order for me to do direct mapping. Like I can utilize here like AutoMapper in order for me to do this mapping together. But for simplicity's sake, and I don't want to really create a profile for AutoMapper and all of that for now, I just did it manually. If you're interested, let me know and I create a video how you can utilize AutoMapper with Blazor as well. So now that I have this, I'm gonna put var result equal await driver service dot add driver new driver, and I'm gonna say if result not equal to null, I'm gonna utilize the navigation manager to navigate to and / drivers. So that's what I had before. Else, or no need for an else, I'm gonna put message something went wrong, please try again. Perfect. So now this is gonna be for my create a driver. Now let's see for an update a driver. So updating a driver, if we go back here to my endpoint, we can see in order for me to do output, I have a different body because it requests an ID. And if I take a look here inside my request, you can see I have a driver, update a driver request. So I'm going to be utilizing this. So copy this, go back to my driver.cs, and here I'm going to put var update driver equal new update driver request. And it's going to be exactly as it was from before. So I'm going to add this here, last name equal model dot last name, driver number, driver model dot number, first name, driver model dot first name. Oops. Then I'm going to have my date of birth, driver model dot date of birth, and lastly I'm going to put my driver ID, driver model dot driver ID. Great. And now that once I have done that, similar logic as before, I'm going to put var response equal underscore actually await underscore driver service dot update a driver, and here it's going to take my driver, so update driver, and then we're going to see if response is true. Let's take the same thing here. Perfect. So if it is true, that means updated. We're gonna navigate back to drivers. Else, we're gonna basically display this message, something went wrong, please try again later. So now that I have this, now let's go back to my drivers.razor. I think we can see how we still have one problem here, which is going to be the deleting of the driver. So let's do this right now. And let's add this. After this one here, we're going to put protected, task, async, async, task, delete a driver. And I'm going to say if string, again, it's not equal to empty to driver ID. It's going to be my main thing. I'm going to put var underscore driver ID equal a new GUID with driver ID. And then all I'm going to be doing here is going to put var result equal await underscore driver services dot delete a driver, and it's going to take my driver ID. And this is in Boolean. Let me just copy paste what I have done here. And basically, if the result is true, we're going to navigate, else we're going to display an error. So pretty straightforward. I think one last item that we want to add, I think that should be enough. But yeah, what we need to do right now is we need to update the drivers page. So we're going to have an edit button. So currently right now inside my drivers thing, I don't have anything here for me to manage my driver or for me to navigate. So let's do this right now. So the way this will work, well, it's simple. I'm going to add a href, and here I'm going to put at, and then it's going to be a parentheses, $, and then I'm going to specify here my flow, which is going to be driver / the driver dot driver ID. That's it. And then once I have closed this, let's see, yep, I'm gonna put the class equal btn dash warning, and I'm gonna say this is gonna be my edit. So now that I have all of this in place, let us run them and see what's gonna happen. So let's go through the debug for my formula app and debug for my API. So now if I go back to my browser, we can see both are running. If I go to drivers, I'm able to see my drivers here. I have my edit button, I have my add button. Let's click on add driver. We can see here I have my form to create a driver. So let me try to create one driver. I'm gonna put Muhammad, Lawan, 23. Let's put 04, 04, 03, 19, 81. Save this, inspect it in case something goes wrong, we can see it. Save driver, and we can see it added the driver directly, and I got back my response perfectly. Let me update. So when I click on update, first of all, I can see something was not right, because basically it's telling me that's not able to find a driver. Okay, so we need to fix this right now. Let's go back here and let me look at this URI. Let's take a look at driver.cs. Let's see this here. Let's go back to the loading screen. And let's put this here and let's try it again. So go back, click on edit. I can see my ID is coming through. I can see my ID is coming through. Let's navigate to this. So I'm gonna go to utilization, implementation, get driver by ID. Let's see this, if this is the right endpoint. I think it's drivers, not driver, but let's double check. So if I go back here, go to Swagger, and let's see, the get and is get drivers, not drivers. So I forgot an S. So I need to stop them both. And I'm gonna click on S here, and now I'm gonna run them again. So I'm gonna run this debug mode, run this in debug mode as well. Perfect. Now let's go back to Chrome. Drivers should be loading now. Edit, and it should work. Gonna leave it to run, and you can see all of the information is loaded. I'm gonna update it with one change my number to 87, 98. I'm gonna change this to, let's leave it as is, save driver. Actually, let's inspect element, console, save driver. You can see something has happened, but maybe it's not reflected. So we can see here that it says it sent it correctly. It was the response. Would not see response. Let's debug this and see what could be potentially causing the issue. So update the driver, and we navigated. Let's add a breaking point in the controller for the put. So this is the post, this is the put. Let's put a breaking point here, and let's try this again. Let's remove this breaking point, and let's run this. Muhammad Lawan, let's add one. I'm gonna put favorite number is 12321, for example, and save driver. So we can see here my information has arrived, and my driver number, oh, this is the problem. My driver number is here, and my driver ID is here. So let's check. If I go through my results, as you can see, my ID is being populated correctly. Let's check if this is matches. So here my ID is 8CB. Let's see the driver which has came. Driver ID, okay, that's the problem. My driver ID needs to match the ID here. It should not be auto-generated. So let me update this. So if I go here to request to domains, and for create driver achievement, no, this is not it. Let's add it here. Again, dot for members, destination dot ID, and here we're gonna put it as, again, comma, we're gonna put options dot map from src dot driver ID, and that's going to be it. And now this will allow us to actually have it up and running. Let's see. Okay, now let's run them both. So now if I click on drivers, we can see it's running. Edit, let's try this one. 222, save driver. We can see it automatically updated it, and now it's being updated. So last one, let's try the delete the driver, and we can see it works. So now basically with this, what we have been able to do is we have created a full CRUD operation. We were able to actually create an interface, an application for our API in order for us to basically create a driver, update a driver, delete a driver, as well as list all of the available drivers. So what we did here is we have utilized Blazor within .NET 8 in order for us to create this user interface. And this is going to be updated within the next video in order for us to see how we can actually utilize .NET Aspire in order for us to bring the API as well as our Blazor front end together in order for us to make sure they work together. And this is going to be a very exciting video coming up next. But for now, we were able to create a front end for our API utilizing Blazor. I hope this video was helpful. Please like, share, and subscribe if it was. Please leave any question that you have in the comments down below. If you have anything not clear or any topic that you would like me to cover, please also mention it in the comments down below. If you have made it this far, just so I would know that you made it, please put your favorite chocolate in the comments, and that means that I would know exactly who made it, and I will basically make sure to like their comments. Thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day.